The thing that we always go back to is it's policy over politics. So that's what we have to remind ourselves when we're trying to help educate lawmakers, policymakers, and just people out in the communities. I think that being a lawmaker, being a policymaker is really challenging. So that's something that we want to try to do is come alongside them, present them with the data, present them with thoughts about where the gaps are in child well-being, and make some recommendations on what we see from our partners in other states, what they're doing to improve their numbers, and how that can translate to Alabama.
Alrighty, welcome in Alabama Politics this week. Josh Moon and
David Person. How you doing?
How are you, David?
I'm good. How are you?
Oh, it's great, man. It's we've eclipsed 90 degrees. So I'm happy. It's if I get that humidity up a little higher, I'll be doing even better. And yeah, man, I'm enjoying life, man. It's nice over here these days. Hey, before we move in, and we got a good show. We're double booked on guests with Will Boyd and Apreill Hartsfield from Voices for Alabama's Children, and so they got some good conversations to come your way. But first, let me tell you about our fine sponsors of this program, because it is Alabama Politics This Week, brought to you by Wind Creek Entertainment, and we are really appreciative of the folks at Wind Creek Entertainment and what they do, and we really wish y'all would go and check them out. They run 3 great resorts in this state, in Wetumpka and Atmore and Montgomery. I like to say every week, break up the trip to the beach as you're headed down, either in Wetumpka or, if you're headed a little closer to that, down to Atmore, and stay in one of those places. There's stuff for the kids to do. There's stuff for the adults to do, obviously. There's great restaurants. There's great spas. There's a fantastic pool, at both Wetumpka and Atmore. It's the pool area out there. Go, like David's told you a couple of times now, go online also and check out the scheduled list of performers who are coming into town at both places. They have great shows and things that are happening all the time. Listen, I feel like people, especially those who haven't been, they think of it as almost like a hokey little thing. I'm telling you, go to these places and experience what we're talking about, man. This is
far from.
It is first class all the way around. You're not going to have a better experience. If you've been like to Vegas or some other casino or whatever, it is on par with such an experience. They don't have some of the game options because our lawmakers are idiots, but they have everything else. And what they've been able to do with what they have is, just phenomenal, man. It really is phenomenal. It's first class.
And to second what you said, I was a few years back. I went to a wedding in Delaware, and it was on an Indian reservation up there, and it's amazing how you have one idea in your mind of what a reservation is, and then you get there and you see, wait a minute, this is just a community.
Yeah,
they had a huge complex there. We stayed in a wonderful hotel, gorgeous. And it had the casinos and the shopping mall and all that other stuff. And then I get down to Wetumpka, and it's basically the same thing almost. The only difference is Wetumpka doesn't have a shopping mall, but in terms of just the amenities, the hotel rooms, the activities that you can engage in at the casino, like you said, the swimming pool, the spa.
Man.
It's
first class. That's first class. That's the only thing you can say about it. Look, go online, Wind Creek Entertainment, look them up. Google up Wind Creek Entertainment, book a stay, book a room down there, go in with the family, I'm telling you, break it up, or coming back, break it up a little bit, and from the beach. Stay an extra day there, let the kids play at the pool. Look, I'm telling you, you're not going to regret this at all. Look them up. You will not regret it. And we really appreciate what they do for us here, which is basically say, hey, keep putting on the show that you've been putting on this whole time. We're going to have, we've had to beg, but we're going to have Stephanie Bryan on. She's the CEO of Porch Creeks and tribal chair, and she's going to come on in a couple of weeks and be with us and spend some extra time just kind of talking about what has gone on with the tribe of late and over the course of the years and how they've grown and how they've gotten to where they are and what they do. And I think it'll be a very interesting story that people will want to hear. So, all righty. You want the bad news or the bad news? Look, I don't know what else that we can really say about the protests and things that are happening in LA. The one thing I do want to say that seems to get lost a lot in this is, you hear all these people, Hegseth and J.D. Vance and all these other sycophants and morons come on your screen and tell you about how awful LA is and how awful it was and how we had to go in and do these things because LA, look at what's happening. A week ago, LA was fine.
Mm-hmm.
There was no problem in LA. There was no problem in LA until ICE went in and started doing what ICE was doing. And that is what they promised ICE would not do, which is harass good people who were causing no problems, who were not criminals, who were not, and let me be further clear, criminality is not defined by being here undocumented, okay?
Mm-hmm.
That's not criminal, okay? It's not criminal. All right? And so if you don't understand that and you don't understand how that works, then go and educate yourself, because you're basically furthering this idea about people based on lies that are being told to you by racists. And that's what's taking place right now. And then ICE went in and started harassing people at Home Depots and, surprising people at legal hearings, because you don't get more law abiding here than these people who are having to come to periodic meetings with whatever government agency that they were having to come to maintain their work visas or their, the things that were allowing them to stay in this country under our laws. They kept showing up to these things, and ICE is now surprising them at these visits, at these legal hearings, and arresting them and deporting them without warning and some of these people have been in this country for decades,
without warning and without adjudication, and
yes.
To me, and due process. And to me, that's key to what you were saying earlier. When you try to slap a criminal label on somebody without any kind of due process and without any kind of adjudication, you're already starting off on the wrong foot. None of us would want that. If we were arrested or if we were accused, charged with a crime, we would want due process.
Mm-hmm.
We would want an adjudicated process that would ultimately determine legality or not, or criminality or not. And we're depriving people of that.
Yeah. And man, it just, I wrote this week that, it's endlessly frustrating to me to watch people be idiots, about this and to watch people all of a sudden decide in their little pea-sized brains that this is, it's criminal. You come into our country, not follow our laws. All right, let's stop playing pretend for just a minute here, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Let's stop playing pretend that this was some anomaly, that we never wanted these people here, that we didn't know that these things were happening, and all of a sudden it got overrun because of the libs out there or whatever, okay? All right, first of all, it was a Republican president that implemented the last mass amnesty program, all right? And it was Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan, it did that. All along, George W. Bush, George H.W. Bush, several other Republicans out there in Congress were perfectly happy to have millions of migrants come across that border down there and work and do the work in this country that we needed in the various businesses. All right. Was there a crush of people from say 21 to 23 because of certain things that were happening in Central America and other problems that were taking place? Yes, there was. Yes, there was. And I seem to recall this sleepy president asking you to do something about it and coming up with an immigration plan that would have addressed the asylum system in this country, which is our legal process for allowing folks to come in. And the current guy who's over here running around roughshod now and trampling on everybody's rights, having that thing killed. All right.
Because he wanted to use it as a political issue for himself.
Exactly right. Exactly right. And so now we're in this position that we're in here. Okay. And you know full well that every single person that's listening to this has sat in a Mexican restaurant and eaten dinner. And you knew full well that most of the folks in there were probably not legal, did not have the perfect legal status to be here, that they probably didn't come across the border in some documented way. All right. You knew it. You knew it. You joked about it. You laughed about it. You said, ha, I don't know. You paid them the money every week. You went every week and you paid them the money over there. Okay. Yeah. You had them fix up your house. You had them on your construction crews. You had them come to work in your plants. You had them everybody who's out here right now with this attitude about how all these illegals are running over things. You invited them. You invited them over and over and over again, and they came because the life here is what they were promised. All right. This is what the promise that we put out to the world, that to give us your tired, your poor, your huddled masses, yearning to breathe free. That's what we offered. And that's what they came here and they worked their asses off and they made lives for themselves. And now we've got this dipshit that's screwing with them for no reason other than he's a racist asshole.
And how many years have we been talking about, migrants in this country who come here seasonally to pick the crops, to harvest fruit and vegetables and other things, and how many years have we heard that this kind of work wasn't being done by Americans?
Yeah.
How many years have we heard, that in fact, our very economic backbone, in fact, depends on these seasonal migrants coming here to do this kind of work. And now all of a sudden, they're persona non grata. They are the scourge.
Yeah.
It's just crazy.
Well, we're getting into this, and we'll talk a few minutes here too about the kids count data book stuff and things like that, and it kind of goes hand in hand with this right here. We've had this. I don't know what happened to people. I don't know what happened to people with when it comes to like common sense and reality. All right, I mean, What are we talking about with?
But wait a minute, don't you know really? I mean, because isn't this the same thing that was done in this state regarding the 1901 Constitution? You had a bunch of wealthy people who decided that the best way to manage the population of this state, to ensure that they retained their wealth, could grow it, was to divide and conquer. So they created a racial hierarchy. They created a class hierarchy. Donald Trump has just been playing out of the same playbook. That's exactly what he's done. And to your point earlier, Josh, he has decided to do the despicable thing that Ronald Reagan never did, that George H.W. Bush didn't do, that George W. Bush didn't do, and that was to create this humongous divide among people based upon race and ethnicity and class and immigration.
Yeah. No, he's definitely done that. And it, but what gets me is not him. Okay. It's not him. I know why he's doing it. I mean, he's trying to maintain, him and some others like him are trying to maintain, power and wealth. And so I can understand that, that's an easy thing to see. What I don't understand are the people who work jobs who work for a living, who live in middle-class neighborhoods, who live in poor neighborhoods, who have now turned on immigrants and turned on the Hispanic population and are somehow of the belief that these folks are not contributing members of our society, are not valued members of our society, of our communities, of our that somehow, because one immigrant committed a crime somewhere that we continue to highlight over and over and over again, that it somehow erases the contributions to our society of millions of these immigrants that we have invited here, invited into our communities, who we work with, who live next door to us, who I mean, just go to our churches, who we eat alongside of, and in their restaurants. And it just is. When did this happen? That we have allowed, I mean, and we're gonna get into it in just a second with the kids kind of stuff. When we have literal hungry children by the thousands, and at the same simultaneous to having those hungry kids, we have people talking about not feeding them, but protecting them from the goddamn library books.
Bro, it's the same. I'm telling you, the reason it works, the reason this has happened is because that same virus that was in people 100 years ago was never eradicated. We were never inoculated against it. This population of people in this country is extreme. And it's not just, some people may think, oh, you're talking about white people. I am, but not just white people. I'm talking about black people. I'm talking about other people as well, people of other ethnicities. This virus that causes us to think that we have to create some kind of a hierarchy based on race or gender preference or sexual identity or religion or whatever it is, pick the doggone category. It has never been eradicated. And so you always have these doggone opportunists like Trump who realize this, and they just exploit it. They repackage it, they regurgitate it in a different way, and people they lap it up like dogs eating vomit. I mean, and that's really what it is. It's dogs eating vomit over and over again in this doggone country.
Yeah. I mean, it's so, I mean, honestly, man, and some of it, as I've said many times, I'm a pragmatist, which causes me a myriad problems throughout life and stuff, and in different ways and stuff, and makes me approach things a little bit differently. But if things have got to make sense to me, you know what I mean? And when I hear, when I hear even a news story that paints Donald Trump in a bad light, my immediate thought is that can't be true. I mean, because no rational person would think of things in this way. And so there's no reason for him to have done X, Y, or Z. So let me read a little bit more and try to come to understanding of what actually happened. That's always my thought on these things. And so for somebody like me, when I see Billy Bob online ranting and raving about they're all illegal. That's what the problem is. You didn't want the law to come and take you out of here. You should come here illegally. You should have done it the right way. It just drives me insane. It drives me nuts to know what his life has been like for the last 40 years. All right. In terms of interacting with and living with a various number of immigrants who he's relied on for the betterment of his life and his community and his children and his job and everything else that goes into this, and to now hear him talk about this as though he's been somehow above all of that, and even worse, to pretend as though these folks who he's relied on, who's made his life exponentially better, were somehow a detriment to his life. Or are currently a detriment to his life. And they're not. They're so not. They have aided you and these communities in so many different ways. And it drives me endlessly insane to watch this stupidity go on.
And that's good. It should drive you insane because it's insane. But like I said, this is a repackaged playbook. As a black man in America, I've seen it multiple ways. As a person in this country, I've seen black people and other minorities or historically disenfranchised groups also adopt this same kind of mindset when it comes to somebody that's an other, however you want to define that. It's a virus that I wish we could get rid of, but it just seems like we can't kill it.
Yeah, it does. I mean, I get it. And, and to that end, I also, it's one of the reasons that the racism thing has never made sense to me, because it's such an idiotic way to judge a person. I mean, the color of the skin, you know what I mean? If you really sit and just think about that, all right, if you really sit around and just think about color of the skin defining whether or not you like another human being. You know what I mean? It's almost as dumb as like, well, I don't like people who wear brown coats. You know what I mean? It's as arbitrary as that. It really is. It's that dumb, man. It's just,
it is. You're right.
It has nothing at all to do with the person. And that is just so stupid. But, speaking of stupid, the Kids Count data book came out, and it's not stupid. It's just depressing. Every single year. And we're going to have Apreill Hartsfield on and talk about this and talk about some of the numbers and the specifics. But, just an overview, we're a terrible state for children. 43rd. We're ranked 43rd in terms of the way we care for our children and the opportunities that they have here. We're awful. We're absolutely awful. For all of our bullshit, we're pro family and pro kids, and we want to have all those babies, and we value babies, and we do an awful job. We're doing an absolutely horrible, horrific job. And then just to, as I said earlier, to kind of bring the two together, our legislature last session, the major focuses were whether or not we were going to keep transgender athletes out of sports, right, which we don't, as far as I know, we have zero transgender athletes in the state. And what was that? The other one was protecting kids from the library books, where we're gonna put the library books, and we're going to protect our children. How about giving them a meal? Or giving them a doctor's visit,
Right. And I'm laughing not because this is funny, but just that I think that, I can hear the incredulity in your voice as you talk about this. And you said something, and I'm a big fan of your columns. You said something in your column. I just want to quote it. You said, I'm from Alabama, where 82% of eighth graders are below grade level in math. So there's absolutely no chance I could accurately convey the percentage difference between 41 and 29, but I know it's a lot. Okay, so that's a funny line. But then you say this, and I also know, because I checked, not a single one of the teen deaths in Alabama was caused by a risque book, a drag queen, or a transgender athlete. Now, you were talking about the fact that the national death rate of children in our country is 20, and children and teens is 29, but Alabama's death rate is 41 out of 100,000, which puts us way above, at least 11 percentage points, or not percentage points, but 11 points higher than the national average. Then you said not one of them was caused by a book, a drag queen, or a transgender athlete. Yet, as you pointed out, that's where our fixation was with this legislature. Something's wrong with that picture.
Yeah.
Something is wrong with that picture.
Yes. It doesn't make any damn sense. That's what's wrong with it.
No,
I mean,
exactly.
It's like, it's
exactly.
honest. It's honest to God, it's like walking past a hungry child with a swollen stomach that needs food, and you having the ability to give them food, and instead you give them a haircut. It makes, it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense at all. Yeah. It's just, or I don't even know if you give them a haircut. You trim their fingernails. It's just, it's something so inconsequential and dumb. And the books thing is just, it's just made up nonsense. It's so stupid. The books thing is really off the charts dumb. All right. First of all, you know, and I've been meaning to write, I have every much of right as you do. All right. And what I want in a library is I want the opportunity to go into the library with my young child and to find the books that I want there to offer my child the possibility of reading and learning about other children. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I want that to be a thing. I want my daughter to read these books about gay kids and about transgender kids and about black kids and about Hispanic kids. I would like for her to understand their origins. I would like for them to understand what troubles them, what keeps them up at night, what makes them scared in this world. I want her to understand how they feel and what they fear, because I want her to be a compassionate human being who understands and has empathy for other people. And that's how I want her to grow up. I don't want her to be, as apparently you do, an asshole. Okay.
Right.
And listen, if you want to raise little assholes, raise them up. They're your kid. They can be little assholes. Okay. But I don't want to do that. And I have every much a right to not raise assholes as you do to raise them. Okay. And that's what libraries are for. They're for you to go in there with your kids and y'all to read whatever books you want to read. Or if you want to drop them off, take the chance on whatever they're going to pick up. Okay.
Well,
but the books should be there.
Yeah, and to me, that's the undiscussed lunacy of this argument, which is that the simple solution to this always was and still should be parents should take responsibility for their children.
Yeah.
So if you don't want your kid exposed to certain things, then doggone it, be there in the library with them. You shouldn't be treating the library as a babysitter and then at the same time complaining about what kinds of things your child might be exposed to, when the library is not just for your child. Yeah. Library is for everybody. It's for the parent like Josh who wants his daughter to be able to read about certain other experiences and other life stories. It's for the adults who want to read certain things, you know, that may not comport with, you know, another person's value system. We live in a free society. And that's the way it's supposed to be. But you got these parents, apparently, who feel like the library ought to be policing their children, you know, in a way that's consistent with their value system, and then force everybody else to just, you know, adjust to that. And that's insane. That's really insane.
It's all insane. It's this whole thing. People have lost their minds, man. I mean, they really have. They've lost their minds, and listening to them rant and rave about stuff. And you know what I'm blaming? I blame a lot of it on, you know, for a long time we heard this stuff about how every kid gets a trophy. We give every kid a trophy and stuff. You know what? The problem was not the trophies. The problem was the number of parents out there, and I'm going to use Little League as an example, but it's stretched to all portions of life, okay? But to continue to use Little League as this example of everybody getting a trophy, or to piggyback off of that, what the problem was I don't know if this was a problem when you played youth sports, but when I played them, and still today, there were always that group of fathers that got together and stacked the teams. That stacked their teams through the season, that stacked the all-star teams with their friends and the good kids or whatever, and shut out some other ones or whatever. And everybody knew it wasn't fair, what was taking place. That's the problem that we have, is we taught kids from a very early age that it's okay to game the system, that it's okay to not play fair, that it's okay to stack the teams on people right here. And it's okay to treat people however the hell you want to treat them, as long as you're okay. All right. As long as, you know, we always want to talk about fair play and fair sports or whatever, but they didn't give a shit about that. They cared about winning. All right. And that's where I think we lost a lot of people in these things. And it stretched to other parts of life as well. And we had a lot of parents out there that tried to game the system for their kids. And now we've got kids out there that are raising kids of their own, and none of them have ever lost. And they don't know how to deal with it, and they don't know how to experience it, and they don't know how to handle things when life doesn't go their way. And you saw it a lot during the pandemic. Whenever somebody told them that they were going to have to do something that was an inconvenience to them, they lost their damn minds. And so, the sense of community just went out the window and they didn't care. And I think that's what we deal with a lot now. So, all right. That's a pretty good rant to start things off.
I think we got it off our chests.
Yeah. All right, let's get Dr. Will Boyd in here, and then Apreill Hartsfield will follow him, and we'll come back and close this out with a nice right-wing nut. So, all right, we're going to slide out to Alabama Politics This Week, brought to you by Wing Creek Entertainment. We're back in a minute.
Welcome back to Alabama Politics This Week. David Person, Josh Moon, and that other gentleman there that you see on your screen, or if you're listening, Dr. Will Boyd is with us today. And Dr. Boyd is so far the only Democrat to have submitted his paperwork and officially become a gubernatorial candidate for the upcoming election for the state of Alabama. Dr. Boyd, and by the way, full disclosure, my good friend. Dr. Boyd, good to see you, man. How you
Good to see you too, sir. Do I have to reciprocate and say I'm a good friend to you? Do I have to do that?
I think it's implied.
I'm just.
I don't know Will at all.
Yeah.
I just wandered in here. I don't know what's going on.
Good to see both of you
So
gentlemen.
you
Thank
have-
you.
Yeah, we're glad to have you, man. So, running for governor in the state of Alabama, one of the things that I hear as I talk to Democrats and others up here in North Alabama is that people, I think, have the view that this is going to be not just for you running for governor, but for any Democrat running for statewide office. This is going to be a real challenging journey. So why don't you start off by telling folks why you're even doing this? Why are you running for governor?
I'm running for governor because I simply want to revive Alabama. I want to sustain a good practice or good practices that will help Alabama move forward. I want to make sure that people see Alabama as an inviting place. And both of you gentlemen may or may not have seen my previous races, but I always put the people first. I basically say I want to see every Alabamian have a shot at the American dream. Now, jumping straight into the race, considering the fact that there is a sitting U.S. senator in the race right now who is able to raise a considerable amount of money, you're probably talking about the race being somewhere from, 8 to 20 million, or could be even more. And then you factor in Alabama enjoys, or at least President Trump enjoys Alabama's support probably more than any other state. You're going to see a lot of his presence, his comments, I'm sure, being inserted into the race. So yes, it's going to be an interesting race. I suspect I will become a talking point, a target quite a bit, or just the opposite. I could be completely ignored, as many believe in Alabama. If you're on the Democratic ticket, you don't have a shot. But I believe this year it will be different.
So you brought up money. Let's go ahead and talk about that, because I think that's one of the elephants in the room, no pun intended. What do you think? How do you think strategically a Democrat in the state of Alabama can raise the kind of money that will enable him, in your case, to run a competitive race?
Well, in order to address that question, let's look at the fact we have a fractured state party. We also have, obviously, if you both are in the news, making news, reading news, you see clearly that we have some issues at the national level as well, between perhaps a DNC chair and a vice chair. So there's a lot of mending and healing that has to take place from the top to the bottom all across the state. But as far as money, this is going to require people to invest who live outside of Alabama in a grassroots effort with those residents inside who really want to see change and are not relying on a party to get it done. The party has never been the source of our funding. I've been the nominee every time I've run in a regular statewide race. Again, I suspect that 8 million or more will come from people who are likely to see that Alabama does have a shot at becoming purple or blue in this case. And so I believe you're going to see quite a few people interested in getting into the race financially. Already there are a lot of wealthy donors, people who have said they're concerned about where Alabama is, where Alabama's going, and they've expressed interest in my campaign. As the legislative session ended weeks ago, I purposefully did not try to go out and do fundraising as it related to talking to people asking for money, because I did not want an ethics committee or anyone saying that I was violating my fundraising guidelines, I should say. But other than that, to date, we have a lot of people who are interested. Usually there are a number of people who've been faithfully supporting me through previous races that I know will return and donate again. But I'm transparently saying I know a lot of money coming into this race will be outside money, outside the state of Alabama.
Sure. Let me ask you one other question before I turn it over to Josh. Years ago, I was at a conference where there were a bunch of us journalists sitting around the table, and I found it very interesting that as the only I think I was the only black journalist in the room, I think. Or if there was another one, there was only maybe one. And I found it interesting that it was white journalists who brought up the fact that race is always a factor when it comes to politics in Alabama. I thought that was fascinating. I want to ask you, as a black man running to be, if elected, you would be the first African-American governor in the history of the state and one of the few African-Americans to win a statewide office. If you have gotten any kind of read on what the racial temperature is, not only as you have considered running for governor, but just even perhaps in your past races.
Well, I'm fortunately someone who was in a similar predicament before. Actually, I ran for office in Illinois and became the first African-American elected to city council. And I was told by the city manager, the only African-American that was ever elected, even in the county that I resided. So I did not go into that race with that thought in mind. As a matter of fact, I never even brought that issue up at any time while in office. I simply went to every door I could. I put on my sneakers, knocked on doors that had Republican signs and Democrat signs, and just asked them for their support. And that's how I ended up winning that election. That's still considered a historic election in Illinois. I think we'll take the same approach. I know we'll take the same approach to just share with people who I am. I know it is challenging when you look at a 66% majority, a 26% minority, and then on top of that, you could even go into the idea of having 5% Hispanic. Last night, I spent time even on Facebook messaging, talking not just to people who were concerned about issues that you raise, but I was talking to people who were concerned about the Hispanic community, what's going on with ICE, what's going on with immigration in Alabama, and how they're concerned. Even further, I was on messaging, going back and forth with another gentleman who was concerned about transphobia, if you want to use that term, or homophobia in Alabama. And I was actually explaining to him what I've shared with my platform and how Alabama needs to become more inviting to all people. And as you moving beyond African American, Hispanic, or whatever you may feel about sexual orientation, unless we become a state that's inviting, businesses aren't going to come in and try to build businesses here or to plant facilities here. There may be some bracks, or maybe there may be a base realignment and an adjustment here or there. New people may come in because the government may make some changes here or there. But long story short, we want to have tax increment financing at local levels, but we at the larger level may say, hey, how can we welcome businesses that are going to come in and not just stay for a few years? Lastly, I'll point out the problem we have in Alabama right now, even as it relates to African Americans and people of color in schools. I have one son who's about to finish up at UNA. Another is at the University of Alabama, and they're already dealing with challenging issues. And this would make people like younger people in their generation choose not to stay in Alabama. So we have to make sure we fight brain drain and look at brain gain by incentivizing people, no matter the race, to stay and to teach, to offer student loan forgiveness programs, perhaps $10,000 to $15,000 for people who want to teach in the state, and make sure we do all we can to wrap our arms around every Alabamian and make sure they feel welcome here.
I had a couple of questions, and then I heard you say something towards the beginning that brought a new question to mind, and that was, and I want to ask you about it. Is you mentioned that a lot of people look at the Democratic side of the ticket in the state, and they don't feel like somebody has a chance, but you said you feel like in this particular race you do, or the Democrats do. What do you feel like has changed? What's unique now that hasn't been happening in the past that is going to change for this race?
Well, I believe it's always important that you have money. More importantly, that you have a message, and ultimately at the top that you have the right messenger. I never talk about myself, promote myself, but on campaign trails, you really have to. I believe I've been the right messenger. I've served as a county chair, twice elected. I've served on the executive committee for the state Democratic Party twice as well, 2 terms. I've helped other county chairs across the state. And to answer your question specifically, having the right messenger and other people with me on the campaign trail has been beneficial. The problem has been, even with the right message, the right people delivering that message, we've had very little financial support, as that is probably a factor of the internal fighting that has occurred between our party, the division that is there. So it's not that we've never had candidates who are qualified. It's that we need full support. And I've made this very clear, very transparently, that we didn't have the support we needed. We had, Mr. Person just mentioned the race. We had a full African-American slate as we went into the last run, as far as the constitutional officers were concerned. And yet we saw a low turnout in some areas, even in African-American communities, because people felt like there was no hope. We also had, in my case, running against now Senator Katie Britt, and of course, her serving as a chief of staff to Senator Shelby. You had a lot of people who felt like, because of the amount of money they could infuse into her campaign, that a person like myself had no chance. So they choose to back candidates that they feel can bring dollars into the state. And again, that may be that they don't fit the mold for their beliefs politically, but again, they're looking at how their businesses are going to go forward too. So I believe this race is different because I'm will be running against likely a candidate who has served in the Senate, and I don't believe in putting anybody down, but obviously you're going to see it brought out that there are concerns about residency. You're going to see concerns about perhaps trading, SEC issues. You're going to see other concerns that relate to how Veterans Affairs were handled, the blocking of promotions for your top brass staff officers. Some could argue national security was at stake. So these are all factors that I think cause people to get excited about our campaign. And already I have, instead of just having door knockers and people who have come in from other states to help me with ground operations, I now have people who are ready to volunteer to help at the strategic level at the top and to help us push a viable plan that's going to push us forward. And at the end of the day, I don't believe, Mr. Moon, in trying to run a race where it's all about how bad somebody is. I want to promote more of what I can do. And at the end of the day, I hope, answer your question with one last point. I hope media and even people in the communities that watch or appreciate print media, podcast, or even video television, I hope they will push for localized or even statewide debates. I have been primarily shut out by the other side because no one wants to debate me publicly on television. If we had those opportunities, that would actually give us an opportunity to let the state see more of who we are. Of course, no money to put television commercials can hurt a candidate, and no money to get on radio is an issue. But all of those have changed. People are ready to donate. They're ready to give. And I believe it's going to be an interesting race.
Last thing quick before we let you go. You've been doing this for a while. Now you Yeah. I mean, you've been banging your head against the wall, like I mean, listen, I bang my head against a few walls myself around here, and I know David does as well. But, um, I think one of the problems that we've had is messaging and getting that message out to people. And because, I mean, the polls show consistently that Democratic policies are more popular. The Democratic candidates are usually more likable. But for whatever reason, those things don't seem to resonate when we talk about what we're doing with tax cuts or what we're doing with tax breaks for families or trying to help working families. Somehow or another that gets overshadowed by the one transgender athlete that may or may not be in the state at any one particular time. How do we get over that? How do we get past that?
Well, I believe Democrats have done a remarkable job at governing, but do a poor job at saying how well we do it or what we've done. So we don't promote our success as well. As it relates to, I'll just stop on the issue you just mentioned. When you have an issue like transgender athletes, if you look at the number of transgender athletes nationwide, I'm talking about the double digits at high school levels now. And then you look at comparatively the number of family members that are in homes at the same high school level that are in crisis as it relates to food, you're looking at, and I'm going to over exaggerate for a second, you're looking at a double digit number versus a number that's closer to 13 million. So we have to explain, yes, while you're focused on trying to make a hot button issue about 13 or 14 people, what about the 13 million homes that don't have food to eat on a daily basis or in crisis? Messaging has to be specific. One of the things that I do is when I go into, for instance, Lowndes County, I want to tell the people, yeah, I realize what you already know. There's a sewage issue. There's an infrastructure issue. But you come along and say there are 25,000 people in the state of Alabama that have a sewage crisis right now. Here's how we fix it. You don't just say I'm pushing an infrastructure bill that's at the national level. You come in and you make it specific to every county, every city you face. And that's why Republicans, independents, and Democrats, when they're in the room with me in chambers of commerce, I'm a former business professor, so I am pro-business. I'm a person who's flown across the country and talked to union leaders about ways that we can invite people to come in and see what we do or what they do. I've done that alongside people on stage like a Chuck Schumer and even the House minority leader, Hakeem Jeffries. I was one of those special guests that appeared to do that in New York very recently. I've stood with coal miners. I've stood with communication workers. And when I'm out there in the field saying, I feel your pain, I see what gains you're looking at. When I message and make it clear, people understand it. So here's what I would say as it relates to reviving Alabama very quickly. The main issues are the economy, their health care, and their community stability. So let's pause for a second. The economy, you could argue Alabama does all right with hiring and making sure jobs are there. So we could say unemployment is not as bad as it is in other states, but we could also say that we have more people dying than we have being birthed. We're suffering from the brain drain I mentioned earlier. We have a lack of skill set to go into the jobs that we need in the future. So we're facing a whole lot of crises. You've reported about the sugar high being over, the reporters have, and how the revenue streams that the state has leaned upon are not going to be there. We can't just depend on Department of Education money coming into our state. California is a big state that's in the news. They contribute more to the federal government. On the opposite side, we receive more. And so we have to figure out how we can stop taking so much and start generating more. Even in the expansion of Medicaid, I have a plan where we can actually put hundreds of people to work. We can save hundreds of thousands of dollars. We can actually get the state the help that every Alabamian needs that's on Medicaid and those that need help with Medicare. So we just need to get that message. It's simple points, and we have it all. We have it all. Democrats have the messaging. We just have to learn how to get it out very quickly and speak in sound bites. I didn't do it in my reply to you. Speak as if you're giving an elevator speech. Talk at at a level that everybody understands you. And that's how we succeed in this race.
Well, listen, of course, that we wish you luck, and that we know you're certainly better than the alternative. I mean, my God, I know you don't want to say anything bad about people.
No,
I do. And yeah, listen, Dr. Will Boyd, thank you for coming on and spending some time with us, and for man, for just continuing to bang your head against the wall and show people every day that there is a viable option. There are people out there who are thinking about things and taking this stuff seriously, and who actually want to do serve the public and do good for the public out there. So thank you for what you're doing, and man, if we can help, we're certainly willing to. But keep up the good work, and good luck to you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you to both of you. I really appreciate your time. Have a great day.
All right,
take it easy, Will.
That is Dr. Will Boyd. We're going to slide out. We'll come back in just a minute. It's Alabama Politics This Week. Back in a second. Alrighty, welcome back. Alabama Politics This Week. Josh Moon, David Person, and we are happy now to be joined by Alabama Kids Count Director Apreill Hartsfield. And I just, you see how those titles just flow right off my tongue. It's professionalism. I knew I was prepared when we started, and I knew all this stuff. And nobody has any idea. Apreill, thank you for coming on, spending some time.
My pleasure. Thanks for having us.
All right, so we wanted to get you on because Voices, and they do the Kids Count data book, and I've read some Grapes of Wrath, and there's some depressing material every year, and listen, God bless y'all for what you do. All right, don't let this sound like I'm putting y'all down at all, because you're just really holding up a mirror to everyone. But every single year, this seems to me, at least, to be depressing, and where we are as a state and how we treat our children. I guess this year, when you look at the data, you do this, you've been around it for a while, you see it all the time. Was there anything this particular year that stood out to you?
It's really, it's very interesting this year because the mixed outcomes really are hard to understand. On the one hand, we've got more children or fewer children living in families where the parents don't have secure employment, year-round full-time employment. On the other hand, we have the number of children living in homes with a high housing cost has gone up. And while child poverty hasn't increased, it's been stagnant around 21, 22% over the last 20 years. And there's no movement on that. So we've got more parents are working, more parents are had that stable job, but it's not translating really to how the children are doing and where the families are as far as economic security.
Yeah, it looked like, just outside looking in, and you can tell me if this is incorrect, but it kind of looked like what happened to some degree was the increase in the cost of housing, and the increase in the cost of goods, kind of erased whatever gains were made in terms of employment. And everybody kept saying, well, listen, this is hurting children, the most, because this is where you're actually going to feel it. And that seemed to be the case, but we also had, in there some old standbys that we can always count on. And that is, the teen pregnancy rate is, it's astronomical for this state. And at the same time, we've got these people in our legislature that are doing, and I don't want you to say anything bad, or you can. Actually, I do want you to say something bad, but I'm not expecting you to say anything bad. But that they're just seem to ignore data like this. You spend a lot of time, I think, talking to folks about these things, and I know that you talk to a lot of lawmakers as well. Do you think this stuff ever sinks in? Ever? I mean, I know it does for some, but for the majority, especially for the group that's really in control of things, we're not naming any name, but for the folks who are in control of stuff, do you think it ever really sinks in?
The thing that we always go back to is it's policy over politics. So that's what we have to remind ourselves when we're trying to help educate lawmakers, policymakers, and just people out in the communities. I think that being a lawmaker, being a policymaker is really challenging. And so that's something that we want to try to do, is come alongside them, present them with the data, present them with thoughts about, where the gaps are in child well-being, and make some recommendations on what we see from our partners in other states, what they're doing to improve their numbers, and how that can translate to Alabama. I do think that some of this information resonates with our lawmakers. We've seen some positive policies come into play to be passed, even during this last legislative session, which was extremely difficult for, I think, everybody involved. And we, Voices was defending against some really terrible bills for children, but we did see some positive gains come out of the legislature. And one of those was the presumptive eligibility, which I think it takes time to really educate a lot of people on and help them understand the connections between the data and reality. And sometimes that takes years of investing time and resources into helping people understand.
Apreill, as Josh suggested, it's not really new to see Alabama struggling in very specific key areas as it relates to the well-being of the children in our state. I've been in the media business almost 40 years, and I'm going to say, to the best of my recollection, for 40 years, or give or take, it's been the same story. What do you think is, based on the fact that you see all of these metrics and you talk to the policymakers, the elected officials and the appointed officials, what do you think is missing here? That Alabama is perennially in a state of trouble and chaos related to the well-being of our children.
I think there's a lot of different things at play. I think that, we've got some really low wages in Alabama, and that there are underlying factors for those. I think that if you don't have some of the experiences that some of our children have, it's really hard for you to understand what's going on. And it's really sometimes even hard for you to get that sense of urgency. And those with the power to make those decisions, it just really takes time for us to help them understand that urgency. And it is from a child advocate standpoint, it is very frustrating, because 30 years ago, Voices was formed in response to the first national kids count data book that came out, because Alabama, even then, was 48th in the nation. While our ranking has improved a little bit, it's not enough for us. It's not enough for child advocates. And that's what we are really trying to help lawmakers see. And we're also trying to help communities see, help working within your communities, not I've talked to a number of children's policy councils in counties across the state. The children's policy councils were set up to really bring together a multidisciplinary team of policymakers to help address issues in the local counties. And one of the complaints or one of the common refrains that I hear there is, well, the state legislature is not doing this or that. But what we have to understand is we have power in our communities to make some changes. And so encouraging those local communities to really take a look at their own data and recognize where those gaps are and come up with some innovative ways to address those gaps. I've seen that in other states. I've seen that even in communities in Alabama. We don't have to sit back and wait on somebody else to do this, to fix whatever's going on. The average person in a community can get motivated. And that's what we're trying to help train our own child advocacy network to do, is to get motivated, to look at these numbers, to not be happy about them, to not sit back and wait, but to go out and communicate this sense of urgency to other people, and to mobilize and to create that grassroots work of trying to address some of these issues locally.
I think that's a really good answer. The idea that instead of waiting for the solutions to trickle down from the top, they need to really push up, sort of surge up from the bottom, which then raises a question about, to what degree, in your opinion, to what degree is the average person or the average church or the average fraternal organization really aware of the plight of Alabama's children?
There are some groups out there that are very aware, and I think they are. I think they are working to try to improve things in their own communities, but I don't think. I think we've got a lot more work to do to educate civic groups, to educate local leadership, to educate even, local boards of education. We do, to some extent, especially with education, that is something that has to be driven from a top-down approach, really. But there are some things that local boards of education can get involved with, can advocate for their students, for public school students. So making sure that they are aware of the issues, making sure that they are aware of the programs that we're investing in, such as the community eligibility program, making sure that kids have access to food at school. And now we've got the summer EBT program, making sure that they're getting that nutrition over the summer. Helping those local leaders understand they've got to speak out and they've got to support those programs to keep them in place. And that we all have to work together to prevent those cuts that we've been hearing about, and making sure that the resources and the investments that we've been making, that we know have been making a difference, that they stay in place. And that really is something that can come from the grassroots level.
So let me just ask one final thing. And let me start by saying I've been a fan of the Kids Count work for many, many, many years. Love what you guys do. What you do is important work. It's eye-opening. But I also have to say, Apreill, I don't remember the last time I've seen a physical copy of the book anywhere. How are you disseminating the information these days? What's your method? Because again, I just question whether or not the right people at the grassroots level are even aware of this. I hear everything you're saying, and I understand there's some organizations that will get the information. But I think by and large, I don't get the sense that the general public does.
And I think that's a good point. But to answer your question, our data is online. It's free. Anybody can log on to our website and download the data book. They can download, we've got all of the county profiles separated, so they can log on and download any of those county information. We do print a limited quantity of the data book, and we have sponsors who pay to make sure that those printed versions get in the hands of lawmakers, of the governor's office, her advisors, her cabinet, and leadership in the different child-serving state agencies in the state. So they are getting into those hands. But I'll be honest, we obviously are a nonprofit, and while the data is really important to get out there, we have had some funding cut back. And so it's challenging to be able to travel and also to spread that information. And it's also challenging to cover the cost of printing more data books to get those in other people's hands. We do try to pull together different collaterals, hand out different one-pagers, that kind of stuff, to provide to children's policy councils. In the past, we have had people sponsor getting the data book in to each of the 67 children's policy councils. That funding is not there right now. We're working to, replace that. But we try to go to any place that we are invited. We try to do some outreach to get into communities. So chambers of commerce, we've talked with them, just different civic organizations across the state. So, and that is something that they can help us do, is go on our website, look at the information, invite us to speak to you, and introduce us to some of the movers and shakers in your community.
I know y'all have the funding, because I know it's always been a problem. For every nonprofit is had the problems, and especially lately. But I know, Dave, this is not what you were doing, but I've got a hard time putting it on the people providing the data. I understand that's what you're there for, and that's what you're doing. Because, and I'm gonna tell you this, because I've been doing this like you have for a long time. There used to be a lot more interest in this information, just basic interest in this information, and in publishing it, and in pushing it out to the people, and in the people responding to that data than what we have right now. I mean, it just drives me nuts. I mean, maybe if we could, somehow or another get, package it with stickers of Taylor Swift, that maybe people would care. I'm obviously nothing against Taylor Swift. I've got, you're right. But I mean, it just seems like, now people don't want to hear some of this stuff. And I'm going to also say there's no way that people don't know some of these things are happening in their communities. There's simply, let me read some of these numbers. Okay. Let's just go run through some of the highlights or lowlights of some of this stuff. We are worse than the national average in child poverty, children living in poverty. We're worse. The national average is 16%. We're at 21%. We are worse than the national average of children whose parents lack secure employment. We are worse than the national average of young children who are not in school, ages 3 and 4. We are worse than the national. These two figures right here, I got to make sure these are right. Oh, this thing saying that fourth graders not proficient in reading, 72% of our fourth graders are not proficient in reading, and 82% of our our eighth graders are not proficient in math. 82%. Listen, I went to school here in Alabama, so I don't know how much 82% is, but that sounds like a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, that can that be right? 82% of our 8th graders are not proficient in math?
Well, and we have to look at the context. I definitely, hear me, Josh. I am not making excuses, because yes, these numbers are not what we want to see. And if we value our children as much as we say we do, then the numbers should reflect that, and that's not what they do right now. But to put this in a little bit of context with the math. So if you look at these 8th graders who, in this data was taken from 2024. So, 4 years ago, they would have been in the 4th grade, right at the beginning of the pandemic. They would have been going home. They would not have been getting that classroom instruction. And that year is my mom taught 4th grade, so I know this. I've had it preached to me, but that year is very important, a very pivotal time in both math and reading skills. So what we've seen is that our children are very far behind the national average, and one thing that our law and policymakers have done is to create the Numeracy Act, and that has allowed the state to put more funding and more investments into how to teach math, how to do a better job of enforcing those or teaching those fundamental skills, so that students have something to build on as they move through school. And we see that is working, because while it's not in this data, earlier this year when we got the NAEP scores back, we saw that the current year 4th graders, the ones that just moved out of the 4th grade this past year, their math scores improved significantly in just 1 year. And that I do believe that's directly connected to the investments we're making in the Numeracy Act. My daughter actually was in one of the numeracy camps, and it made a huge difference in what she's doing, and some of that, in my daughter's case, I think it was just a confidence thing. So having these teachers who really care, who are invested, who've taken the time to do this extra training, pouring into these students, those are some of the things that we can do at a small level that can have a really big impact. So while this 82% is not what we want to see, my hope is that, once the Numeracy Act has been in place for a few years, and that's the other thing, when we find something that works, we've got to leave it in place for a while to see, to let it show what it can do, and to give it time to work and to get across a broader population. So my hope is that by doing this, by making these investments, this 82% will go away, and we will see much better numbers in the future.
Well, unfortunately, we're going to have to kill all that to give the money to the rich people to send their kids to private schools. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to step. You're 1,000% right in what you're saying. It just irritates me to no end to see these numbers, and then to know what some of the other things that we've passed that's going to potentially harm a lot of those programs. To just continue with the numbers for just a second. Low birth weight babies, higher than the national average there as well. Child and teen deaths per 100,000. The national average is 29 per 100,000. Alabama is 41. That's got to be. Is that number one? It's got to be pretty high. It's not number.
I don't think we're number one, but we're very close to it. We're very close to it.
Or I guess I should say number 50.
Right.
Imply that we're children and teens who are overweight or obese. National average 31%, Alabama 36%. Children in single parent families, national average 34%, Alabama 39. And that's actually an improvement. Children living in high poverty areas, 8% nationally, 11% in Alabama. Teen births per 1,000, national average 13, Alabama 20. And that 20 is a remarkable improvement from 26.
Wow.
Yeah.
Mm.
I mean, so, like I said to begin, these are very depressing numbers for the most part. Although it is encouraging to see some of these things coming down, teen birth rate coming down, all that. This is nice, although I don't know that we've done anything for that. Do you, when these things come out, do you hear, I know we keep harping on lawmakers because those are the folks with the power. And I know what you're saying about the local level and everything. And I understand we can kind of work around them, which is kind of a depressing fact in and of itself, that we're trying to basically work around the people who should be addressing this stuff. But do you see any sort of a sense of urgency when these things come out, or have we reached a news cycle? You're just this position in life now where nothing sticks anymore, or does it stick?
I think my answer will depend on the day, honestly. But I don't think we do have the same level of interest, maybe, or it could just be, just overwhelm. Overwhelm of, there is so much here that needs to be changed, that I think a lot of times people just don't even know where to start. And that is, unfortunately, that is our job, is to, really keep this information front and center. And to keep encouraging people to stay in the game. This is, unfortunately, a long game. It's not, we're not going to turn these things around overnight, but we do have to start somewhere. And so, and I am a communicator by training, and it confounds me, to be honest, to try to figure out what is going to resonate with people and what's going to get attention in a moment where there's constantly something distracting us, pulling us away. So we're definitely competing with a lot of different distractions, and we're also trying to educate and rectify some of the narratives that go around these numbers, instead of putting it back on the children and the families, making sure that we understand as a society, as a state, as a community, these are all of our children. And not to echo the songs of echo the thoughts of a popular 80s songs, but they are our future. Our children are our future. And, we're talking about needing to build up our workforce in Alabama. We can't do that with students who can't do math. We can't do that with students who can't read. We can't do that with children who are struggling to try to learn in school when they're hungry. So we've got to own these things as a society, as a state, as a community. It's not just about me and mine. It's about us. It's about and who's missing from the table, when we're talking about these solutions, who's not there to be represented. And Voices is there to represent the children, but it goes much further than that. And so I think it's a complicated thing, but at the end of the day is, just trying to do exactly what y'all are doing, which is getting the information out there for people to hear, making sure that they understand that this is very urgent. These children are children right now, but in 10 years, they're going to be in our workforce. They're going to be taking care of us. They're going to be leading the businesses and leading government. And so we want to make sure that they have the support and the environments that they can grow and develop and become the citizens that we need them to be.
Yeah.
And Apreill, not to be too cynical here, but I think the converse to what you're saying is they either will be, as you said, in these various positions, or maybe worse, because of the deficit, they won't be.
Yeah. Yeah. Listen, I don't envy you, you or anybody else that's in this particular industry right now. When you're out there dealing with, you have these numbers, and then, let's be honest, these numbers are not dramatically different than the numbers from last year or the year before that or the year before that. We've struggled in all of these areas for years now, and somehow or another, we still have parents and a large number of people out here who believe that protecting our children, even when they see that 83% are not proficient in 8th grade math and 73% are not proficient in reading, they're protecting them from books in the library. I mean, it's just, it's a, I don't envy anybody that's kind of try to break through this noise and try to figure out what resonates with people anymore. I don't know how, maybe you just ought to use scare tactics constantly. I mean, really, that seems to be the only thing that gets people's attention anymore. And, to just go completely off the wall bananas with stuff. But, listen, thank you for what you do. Thank you for spending some time with us to talk about it. And, and hopefully, if we can spread it around enough, that people will pay some more attention, and we can get some focus on actual problems that are actually hurting children, out there. I've just, good luck. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having us on. And if I can just throw this out there, our website is www.allavoices.org. So if you want the information, the data book, please log on, download it, and put it to use.
Yeah, we'll try to get a link up as well with this when we post it, and send, maybe we can get some folks over there so we can spread it around a little bit more, and because it's vital information that I think people need, and it kind of highlights what we're not doing to help kids who are actually in trouble here. So, all right, thank you, Apreill. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Yeah,
it is Apreill Hartsfield from Voices. That's. I don't know how they do it every year. It's kind of like the folks that do the prison advocacy. I'm the same way with them. It's endlessly, this endless cycle of just watching the same numbers over and over and over again. And, but thank God they do it, thank God they do it.
Amen to that.
Yeah. All right. Let's slide out. We'll come back in just a minute, wrap this thing up. It's Alabama Politics This Week. We're back in a minute. All righty, welcome back. Alabama Politics This Week. Josh Moon, David Person. Our thanks to Apreill Hartsfield and to Will Boyd. Really appreciate them coming on. Obviously, our thanks again to the fine folks at Wind Creek Entertainment for sponsoring this, and the folks at SPLC for sponsoring it as well. We really appreciate everything they do, and for you guys for listening along and subscribing and making this thing the #1 political podcast in the state of Alabama.
I love that, man. I love that.
Listen, even if it's not true, we're just going to keep saying it until it is.
We saw it on the list. We saw it. We did see it.
Yeah. So, so we're going with it. Thanks to everybody. And if you would like to drop us a line sometime, it is apwproducer@gmail.com, or you can also get me and J Moon at AO. David's stuff is all secret, so don't email him. And
I actually have a Gmail address that can be used. I just need to find it.
Oh,
Let me see if I can find it. Let me see if I can find it real quick.
he's not giving out he's not giving out the one he checks all the time though. Not to
Man, look, I already get too much email at that
let
address
y'all
as it
spam
is.
him with stuff. No, it's listen for real. Leave a comment on Apple and I think on Spotify as well. I know there's one of those other platforms in which you can leave comments now or a rating at least. And so rate us and review us on Apple. Unless you're going to leave a bad review, then don't do that.
Please refrain.
Yeah, and listen, if you like what you hear, if you got ideas for guests, we're efforting some more folks who are running for office on the Democratic side because those folks never get the exposure that they deserve, and so we're going to try to get some of them on as well and talk to them about the platform and what they're looking like in terms of fundraising and what they're addressing in their local communities. And I think you'll be very happy to hear what some of these folks are doing out there. All right, right wing nut, and we're going to do this and close it out. But our right wing nut are the folks at ABC who fired veteran reporter Terry Moran. You may remember him from the contentious interview he held with Donald Trump a few weeks ago. Over the weekend, he sent out a tweet that talked about Stephen Miller, who is, as I've described many times, essentially a vampire bat. And he's also the guy that's in charge of the Trump administration's immigration policies and what's taking place right now. He was apparently the mastermind behind ICE going into various Home Depot parking lots and arresting Hispanic folks. I just quickly to point out here, that's illegal. Under American law. That's very, very illegal what they're doing right there. So you may think it's not because it's ICE and they're chasing immigrants and things, but simply going up and arresting people without provocation, without evidence, and without any sort of fact-based probable cause for asking for identification or anything else, this is America. All right. That doesn't happen. You can't just do that. Okay. And that's exactly what they're doing. And nobody seems to care, apparently. But back to Moran, he basically wrote some things about Stephen Miller and said that, he's a vile human being, that eats his hatred, is well endowed in the area of hatred, and he is a vile person, and said that Trump also is a hater, is a world-class hater, but that his hate was more for personal glorification, and where Stephen Miller's was something that was just cooked into his DNA, and he's just basically a terrible human being. Now, we could get in, like I said, I wrote a column about this as well, and I said, we could get into the truthfulness of this, and which everyone listening, including Stephen Miller, knows that everything Moran said is 100% true about him, and I don't know that he's actually ever shied away from this sort of a thing. But ABC fired him for this. He's been around forever, and it is, to me, the shining example of what's wrong with American media, okay? Because we seem to have this corporate media mindset where it's ABC or NBC or Washington Post or the New York Times or whatever, who have taken this stance of unbiased. We're going to continue to cover the Trump administration in much the same way that we've covered previous presidents and things, no matter how unlike the previous administrations this administration is. And we're going to continue to define fairness as giving equal opportunity to both sides of this. And even though one of those sides is telling you things that we know to be straight up lies, or that they're attacking the media on a daily basis and trying to make it seem as though they are liars when they are simply telling the truth and recounting accurately what's happened. We're going to continue to do these things and continue to give these people a voice and continue to resist any instance in which our reporters may push back on these people and may push back and give an accurate viewpoint and explanation of what's actually taking place and who these people are, we're going to resist that to the point that we're going to fire a guy with the experience level and good record of Terry Moran because he's tweeted out one thing about one vile human being who has done an endless number of vile things while he has been in the White House in the few short months he's been here this time and in the previous time when he was in there. This, I mean, it highlights to me what is absolutely 100% wrong. I mean, it just, and it's we are where we are.
Yeah. So I'm going to say I agree with some of what you're saying. And I guess I'll say overall, I don't think that ABC should have fired him. I do believe, as some other journalists, national journalists have said, that he should have been suspended, but I don't think he should have been fired. The reason I think he should have been suspended, that's cool. That's cool. The reason that I feel that he should have been suspended is that my understanding of his role at ABC is that he is a reporter, not an analyst, not a commentator, not a talking head or media personality like us. So my expectation of a reporter is that a reporter, I mean, we understand everybody's got opinions. We all have opinions. Reporters, when you were a reporter, you had opinions. When I was a reporter, I had opinions. But from an ethical standpoint, we also understood that the expectation was that we were supposed to keep our opinions to ourselves so that people would not confuse our opinions with reporting, or so that people would not think that our reporting was being influenced by our opinions. So for that reason, I think Moran should have been suspended. But I don't like the idea at all of ABC capitulating to Trump and basically saying, or to any, not just to Trump, but if it had been Biden, if it had been Obama, I don't care. I don't think any media organization whose job is to cover the news should be capitulating to somebody that they are covering.
Yeah, I agree. I'll say this. I think that we are in completely uncharted waters. And we were through the first Trump administration. Okay. And I think that what Terry Moran said about Stephen Miller and about Donald Trump, and while, yes, it's his opinion, but there's a lot of times in news reporting in which opinions are offered here. These are and to the point where you could, I mean, just because it was insulting to a person, to me, does not mean that it's not an educated opinion on these sort of things. Okay.
No, I don't disagree with that. Yeah.
I think this is something what I felt like this was something that he took as his time as a reporter, and this was his educated opinion on these two individuals. And he was explaining the difference between the two of them, and his opinion, was it hurtful to Stephen Miller? Maybe. Maybe it was. Maybe it was hurtful to Donald Trump. But the idea that simply because he offered that opinion and then the White House jumped on that it was going to taint his reporting. They were going to do that regardless. They've already been doing it. He did it. I mean, Trump did it at the 250th anniversary of the Marines the other day, where he was on the stage talking about the fake news that he has to deal with all the time. As he was telling people that he's going to restore the names of Confederate generals to military bases. Okay. That's who we're dealing with at this particular point. Saying that these people are vile human beings, or that they have this hatred, they are world-class haters because of X, Y, and Z. I mean, I took that to be that's what his educated opinion of these people are. And I think it's important for people in those positions who have done this, who have sat in those rooms, who have talked to these people and done that. I think we're at a point here with these folks that it's important for the news media people to explain that to everybody, to tell people who they are and talk about this openly. And let's stop pretending as though these people carry equal weight as the folks on the other side of this. All right.
Well, let me ask you a question. Well, a couple questions. One question is, Isn't it pretty self-evident that that's who Donald Trump and Stephen Miller are? I mean, do we really need to hear Terry Moran say that? I mean, it's not only is it,
yeah, I think we do.
But not
we
only
do need to hear everybody say it.
But not only is it self-evident, but they've already got plenty of us out there saying it. You say it, I say it. Of course, and I'm not suggesting
though.
And I'm not suggesting and I'm not suggesting that we are on the same level that Moran is, in terms of popularity and name recognition, all that kind of stuff. But there are other people that are saying it, Josh. I mean, you got the folks on MSNBC that are saying it. Roland Martin is saying it. I mean, you got all these national people that say it.
But I think it's important for people who have Terry Moran standing, whether that be him or some of the other folks at the other networks who've been on TV, who have done these things for years. I think it's important for those people, when they have those feelings about this stuff from their educated experience, okay, from their experience in doing that, I think it's important for them to step out and say, this is unique, and here's who these people are. To take that unique stance and to say, to stop covering for these people, to stop treating this as normal, to stop doing this. For me, for Terry Moran to not do this, even though these were the thoughts that he's had for these people, is a disservice to the public that he's supposed to be serving out there. Okay. I feel like if he is so inclined that he finds that it's weighing on him to this point, because these people are so different than the George W. Bush that he's covered, or George H.W. Bush, or the hundreds of senators and representatives that he's covered and talked to and interviewed over the course of his career. If it's so different that he carries that much weight with him, I think it's a disservice for him not to do that.
Well, I would say if he feels that strongly about it, if he feels like it's got to be said, then I think it's time for him to move on to a position where his saying that does not cloud the dissemination of facts. Because and I think it is a fact. And let me be clear. I think it's a fact that these people are behaving in despicable ways and doing despicable things. But I think there's a way to convey that through straight reporting that is dispassionate and that will not just give fuel to the fire that, the media is an adversary. I think we have to fight on two fronts here in my mind. We have to fight on the front of disseminating truth, but we also have to fight on the front of not capitulating, not just to the craziness of these people, but to the values of these people. And I think both are equally important.
Does that happen at Fox?
But I mean, I think that's Fox's business. They are what they are. And you're right. It doesn't happen at Fox, and they don't pretend to be.
But this doesn't happen.
Well, I understand that, but I'm saying I think we already know what Fox is.
Right.
Fox they've chosen how they're going to do business, and Trump has chosen how he's going to do business. I don't think that means that the rest of us should then say, oh, well, if the value system has been lowered, okay, fine, we're all going to play in the mud. I don't think we should do that.
But what I'm saying is this.
Okay.
Fox clearly does this all the time. Fox clearly does it.
Yep.
What's the number one news network in America?
It is Fox for whatever that's worth. That isn't worth what it used to be. It really is not worth what not much though. Not the way it used to be. But it's enough.
Let's just say Fox has eclipsed ABC, NBC, CBS, MSNBC, CNN. They've eclipsed all of them. And in a number of cases, you can combine the viewership of several of those networks, and it still would not equal Fox. So,
depending on the time slot,
my point in saying that is, it is very clear that the American public doesn't give a shit about those ethics anymore. Okay, they don't care, and so if they don't care about those ethics anymore, and if what we're doing on this side is pointing out the truth about things and pointing out and relaying to people an accurate description of things. Why are we worried about the ethics of it when we're losing the battle overall?
Because I think ethics matter. They always matter. Right and wrong always matter in the final analysis. And I think that goes to the soul of who we are as a society. It goes to the soul of who we are as a profession. So I think we have to always value ethics. Now, let's also put some context into this whole thing about Fox being number one. You know, the last time I saw, you know, ratings mentioned for various Fox shows, we were talking about not even 1% of the population.
Right.
Literally, not even 1% of the population.
But you know that Fox is driving this train. You know that the Fox is
what I know is they're driving the train. I know that they are certainly part of the train. And maybe they are driving the train, but the train that they are driving, again, I would argue, if you look at the numbers of people that are consuming news, you know, from Fox and from anybody else, it's almost infinitesimal relative to the whole population. So I think what we've got here is, unfortunately, you know, we have a problem that we really can't solve. And that problem is that we've got an apathetic population. We've got an uninformed or underinformed apathetic population. And we have, as a part of that group, you have a very, very, very small subset of people that keep a lot of the conversation going. And some of that, absolutely, we can attribute to Fox News and Newsmax and some of those other right-wing outlets.
Yeah.
But again, I think it's incumbent upon somebody to say that even while the barbarians are being barbarians, we're not going to become barbarians. We can be warriors, we can fight, we can stand up and tell the truth, but we're not going to be barbarians in doing it.
I'm just going to say, all right, we've done a whole show now talking about misinformation. Mm-hmm. Somebody's driving that misinformation. All right. Mm-hmm. I mean, we're overriding that. They are so effective at doing this. They are overriding the truth that is right before people's eyes, and being very, very successful in doing so to the end, to the benefit of a certain group of people, in whatever group that is out there that's pushing things. All right. They've been very, very effective at doing this. And I'm not suggesting, even though I may have misspoken, said this earlier, that we ignore ethics. What I am saying is that we need to redefine what the ethics are. Okay.
Okay.
And the ethics in this, to me, is no longer presenting things in this, I'm Terry Moran, and I must never say how I feel, even though these people are awful people, and I'm never going to say that, and I'm going to continue to present these folks as though they have the same standing as these other folks over here. I'm saying the ethical thing at this point in time, because of the change that has occurred, both with the Trump administration and the way that they've done that. I mean, we just weren't, the news media and it was just not prepared for a president that just outright lied constantly. They just outright lied, and just continued to run right over the lies with more lies. They weren't prepared for that. And they weren't, the Foxification, and I put it on Fox, but it's really a conglomerate of a media apparatus that's out there, a right-wing media apparatus that is hell-bent on spreading this message and doing the work, basically, of the Republican Party and the conservative wings and MAGAs and everybody else. They're doing the work for them of PR, basically. All right. And the Democrats don't have that, because I feel like the ethics that we are abiding by in a lot of cases that led to Terry Moran's firing are outdated to the point that they no longer work in the climate in which we're living. If Terry Moran can't say, that's an awful motherfucker right there, and I've been here reporting on this and doing this work, and here's what I think of this guy. If he can't even do that, then what chance do we have against an apparatus on the other side that's essentially running comms out of the White House and telling you that transgender kids are a bigger problem than hungry kids? We don't have one.
I think, and I disagree. And you're a smart guy, and I think this is an important conversation. not to belabor the point, but I disagree with that. I think ABC News is a big and vibrant enough operation that they had other ways, to communicate the very thing that you said, almost in the way that you said it. They've got, if George Stephanopoulos had made that post, yeah, I wouldn't have had a problem with that. And I'd be standing right with you saying George Stephanopoulos is not really a news guy. He's a personality. If he wants to characterize Trump in a certain way, I got no issue with that. But I just think certain people in certain roles should not be doing certain things. That's my bottom.
Oh, listen, we disagree. I mean,
yeah, what happens.
Listen, I hate to leave the show with you being wrong, but that's just the radio. I mean, it's just, no, I'm just kidding. Listen, everybody has their opinion on things, and I get it. I get where you're coming from, and I don't say what I say lightly. I just think that we have. I'm watching the world burn, and in the meantime.
And to be clear,
telling people, "Hey, pay attention to the labels on the ladder fluid."
And to be clear, I think your point of view is very legitimate. I don't happen to agree with it, but I think it's extremely legitimate. I think it's extremely valid, and I think this is an important conversation.
I do too.
And it could be that somewhere down the line, I might be like, you know what? Maybe all the Terry Morans need to be doing that. But right now, I feel very strongly that we need to just keep the barbarians at the gate as best we can.
I get it. But I'll say this: I think we can probably agree on this. That the Democrats have got to come up with a messaging system that does not rely on these folks. And and listen, I would suggest first of all giving millions of dollars to local podcasts. I like the sound of that. All right, let's get out of here. Till next week, y'all be safe out there.
Peace.